All housing markets in Melbourne are now officially out of reach for average wage earners.
More than 1,000 homes have been removed from Melbourne's rental market.
Times are tough for investors trying to offload units and apartments here in Melbourne. 1 in 5 is now selling at a loss.
Today we can announce that for apartments, units and townhouses, the off-the-plan stamp duty concession that cuts upfront costs for buyers.
The move will cost taxpayers $55 million, but some industry experts say it doesn't even scratch the surface of the housing crisis.
Here's what the Victorian government doesn't want you to know. 8,000 completed apartments are sitting unsold across Melbourne right now. That's not under construction. That's finished, completed, ready to move in apartments that developers can't sell. And it's destroying the market. While Premier Jacinta Allen announces stamp duty concessions that experts say won't help, Melbourne's apartment market is in complete collapse. Prices are falling, developers are stuck, and apartment owners who bought in the last 5 years are watching their property values sink below what they paid. In this video, I'm breaking down the exact numbers the government is hiding, which suburbs are getting absolutely hammered, and why the Premier's solution is actually making things worse. Let's get into it. Right, let's start with the data, because the scale of this crisis is absolutely cooked. According to Charter Keck Kramer, one of Australia's leading property advisory firms, there are 8,000 completed apartments sitting unsold across Melbourne. That's 17% of every unit completed between 2020 and 2024. Let that sink in. Nearly 1 in 5 new apartments built in the last 4 years can't find a buyer. And these apartments aren't spread randomly across the city. They're concentrated in exactly the suburbs you'd expect. CBD, South Bank, Footscray and Box Hill. These are areas that were supposed to be booming. Areas where the government promised urban renewal and high-density development would solve the housing crisis. Instead, we've got thousands of brand new apartments with no one living in them. Developers holding stock, they can't shift. And a market that's completely frozen. Here's where it gets even worse. Charter Keck Kramer director Richard Temlett explained that the unsold stock is significantly cheaper than new apartments. Old unsold apartments are going for about $8,000 to $10,000 per square metre, while new developments entering the market need to be priced at $12,500 to $15,000 per square metre just to break even. That's a $4,000 to $7,000 per square metre gap. For a typical 60 square metre 2-bedroom apartment, that's a $240,000 to $420,000 price difference. Why would anyone buy a brand new apartment for $800,000 when they can get a completed one down the street for $550,000? They wouldn't, which is exactly the problem. But wait, if developers can't sell their stock, surely they've stopped building new apartments, right? Exactly. According to JLL, only 771 apartments were completed in the first half of 2025. If that pace continues, we're looking at roughly 1,900 completions for the full year, the lowest level since 2008. To put that in perspective, Melbourne has historically completed around 3,600 apartments per year on average. We're now at half that rate. Why? Because developers can't get new projects off the ground when they're sitting on 8,000 unsold units from previous developments. And here's the nightmare scenario. Even though construction has collapsed, apartment prices are still falling. According to the Real Estate Institute of Victoria data analysed by Urban Property Australia, 2-bedroom apartments, down 0.8% to $627,000 year to June 2025. 1-bedroom apartments, down 1.6% year to June 2025. 3-bedroom apartments, down 3.0% year to June 2025. This is a market in freefall. Construction has halved. Thousands of apartments can't be sold, and prices are still dropping. That's not a correction. That's a collapse. So who exactly is getting destroyed by this apartment market collapse? Let me paint you a picture of the people caught in this crisis. Victim number 1, apartment owners who bought 2020 to 2024.
Melbourne City Council area has posted the highest proportion of loss-making sales for units in the country. On average, owners who held a unit for the last 10 years lost around $65,000.
Meet Sarah. She's 32 years old, works in marketing, bought a brand new one-bedroom apartment in South Bank in late 2021 for $550,000. She put down a 10% deposit, $55,000 she'd been saving since university. Borrowed $495,000. Back in 2021, she locked in a fixed rate of 2.19% for 3 years. Her repayments were $1,850 a month, manageable on her $85,000 salary. She thought she was building equity, securing her future, getting into the property market before it was too late. Fast forward to 2025. Her fixed rate expired. She's now on a variable rate of 6.5%. Her repayments? $3,300 a month. That's an extra $1,450 per month, $17,400 per year she suddenly has to find. But here's the really brutal part. Her apartment is now worth less than she paid for it. According to the latest REIV data, one-bedroom apartments in South Bank are down roughly 5 to 10% from their 2021 peaks. Sarah's $550,000 apartment? Now, valued around $495,000 to $520,000 depending on the building. She's in negative equity. She owes $470,000 on a loan for an asset worth $500,000. If she sold today, she'd barely break even after agent fees and legal costs, and she'd lose her entire $55,000 deposit. She can't refinance. She can't sell without taking a loss. She's trapped. Victim number 2, developers holding unsold stock.
A lot of large construction companies folding because of the fixed price contracts that they signed, and then the rising cost of construction, which means the jobs they've been starting over the last 12 months have created losses.
Developers are stuck with billions of dollars worth of completed apartments they can't move. According to Charter Keck Kramer, 8,000 unsold apartments at an average price of $600,000 means developers are holding roughly $4.8 billion in unsold stock. That's capital they can't use to start new projects. That's debt they're servicing with no revenue coming in. And every month, those apartments sit empty. Developers are bleeding money on body corporate fees, council rates, and interest payments. Victim number 3, first home buyers who thought apartments were affordable.
A single parent renting after a divorce, buying in his outer suburban area feels out of reach. That's even with the 5% scheme and his 6-figure wage.
Apartments were supposed to be the affordable entry point into Melbourne's property market. But even with prices falling, they're still out of reach for most first home buyers. A $600,000 one-bedroom apartment in South Bank requires $120,000 for a 20% deposit to avoid LMI. $100,000 plus household income to service the loan without mortgage stress. Strata fees of $3,000 to $6,000 per year. Council rates of $1,500 to $2,000 per year. Melbourne's median household income is around $133,000. Most single first home buyers earn $70,000 to $90,000. They can't afford to buy, but they also can't find rentals because construction has collapsed, and the rental vacancy rate sits at just 2.2%. Meanwhile, median apartment rents in Melbourne hit $879 per week in mid-2024. For someone earning $80,000 a year, that's nearly 60% of their take-home pay going to rent alone. They're locked out of buying. They're being crushed by rents. And the government's response does nothing to help them. So how did Melbourne's apartment market turn into this nightmare? It's not one factor. It's a perfect storm of policy failures, construction problems, and market dynamics colliding all at once. Factor 1. Massive oversupply, 2020 to 2024. Between 2020 and 2024, Melbourne went on an apartment building binge. Thousands of units were approved, constructed, and completed, most of them targeting investors and overseas buyers. The supply was concentrated in just a few suburbs: South Bank, Docklands, CBD, Footscray, Box Hill. These areas saw dozens of high-rise towers go up simultaneously. The theory was that Melbourne's booming population would absorb the supply. It didn't happen. Factor 2, construction costs exploded. According to industry data, construction costs have surged by up to 40% since the COVID pandemic. Timber, steel, concrete, everything got more expensive. Labour shortages pushed wages up. Supply chain issues caused delays. An apartment that cost $300,000 to build in 2019 now costs $420,000. But the sale price hasn't gone up by 40%. In fact, it's gone down. Developers are caught in a vice. They can't build new apartments profitably, but they can't sell the old ones they've already built. Factor 3, investor exodus. During COVID, international student numbers collapsed. Overseas investors pulled out. Even local investors started selling because rental yields in Melbourne apartments are terrible. Often just 3 to 4% when you factor in body corporate fees, vacancy periods, and property management costs. Why would an investor buy a Melbourne CBD apartment with a 3.7% yield when they can get 4.6% in Perth? They wouldn't. So investors left the market and demand collapsed. Factor 4, policy disasters. The Victorian government has systematically attacked property investors with a cocktail of taxes designed to plug budget deficits. Land tax thresholds were slashed. Vacant land taxes were expanded. Landlord regulations became some of the strictest in the country. The result?
More than 1,000 homes have been removed from Melbourne's rental market.
21,700 fewer rental properties in the last financial year. Investors are fleeing Victoria. So what's the Victorian government doing about 8,000 unsold apartments and a collapsing market? In October 2024, Premier Jacinta Allen announced a 12-month stamp duty concession.
Today we can announce that for apartments, units and townhouses, the off-the-plan stamp duty concession that cuts upfront costs for buyers will now be extended to everyone.
For anyone buying off-the-plan apartments, units and townhouses. No price caps, no restrictions. Just buy off the plan and you'll pay significantly reduced stamp duty. Sounds good, right? Here's the problem. Problem number 1. This does nothing for the 8,000 completed apartments already sitting unsold. Those aren't off the plan. They're finished. The concession doesn't apply. So developers are still stuck. Problem number 2. Buyers are now incentivized to buy off the plan, new developments, rather than completed stock. This makes the oversupply problem worse, not better, because old stock becomes even harder to sell. Even industry groups are saying the policy doesn't address the real problem.
The Allen government is slashing stamp duty fees for Victorians buying apartments and townhouses off the plan. The move will cost taxpayers $55 million, but some industry experts say it doesn't even scratch the surface of the housing crisis.
The opposition slammed the policy as a market failure caused by Labor's broken planning system and tax-obsessed approach.
In order to be in a position to buy a unit or a flat off the plan will take more than a year if it hasn't already started.
And they're right. Stamp duty concessions on off-the-plan apartments don't help. Sarah stuck in negative equity with a South Bank apartment worth less than she paid. Developers holding $4.8 billion in unsold completed stock. First home buyers who can't afford new apartments even with the discount. Renters facing a 2.2% vacancy rate and soaring rents. So where does this crisis lead? What happens to Melbourne's apartment market from here? Best case scenario. The 8,000 unsold apartments gradually get absorbed over the next 2 to 3 years. Prices stabilise. Construction slowly ramps back up. The market finds a new equilibrium where supply matches demand. Worst case scenario. The 8,000 unsold apartments trigger a cascading collapse. Desperate developers slash prices to move stock. Let's say they drop asking prices by 20 to 30% just to get cash flow. That sets new benchmark prices. When apartments in your building sell for 30% below what you paid, your apartment is now worth 30% less too. More owners panic. More people try to sell. Prices spiral down. Realistic scenario. We're probably somewhere in between. The market will continue to decline through 2025, maybe another 5 to 10% fall in apartment values. Some developers will take big losses. Some apartment owners will default. By late 2026, if interest rates have fallen and the economy stabilises, we'll hit a floor. But it won't be a quick recovery. Melbourne's apartment market will likely underperform houses for another 3 to 5 years. This has happened before. Between 2008 and 2015, Melbourne apartments went through a similar flat cycle, while houses recovered quickly. History suggests apartments could remain stagnant until at least 2028 to 2030. Here's the truth about Melbourne's apartment market collapse. 8,000 completed apartments are sitting unsold. Developers are stuck with billions in stock they can't move. Apartment prices are falling, and construction has hit the lowest levels since 2008. This isn't media hype. This isn't fear-mongering. This is documented by Charter Keck Kramer, JLL, Urban Property Australia, and REIV data. The numbers don't lie. While Premier Jacinta Allen announces stamp duty concessions for off-the-plan purchases, a policy that helps developers start new projects but does nothing for the 8,000 already completed apartments, actual apartment owners are trapped in negative equity. First home buyers still can't afford to buy, and renters are crushed by a 2.2% vacancy rate and record high rents. Remember Sarah? She bought it in Southbank in 2021 for $550,000. Her apartment is now worth $500,000 or less. She's in negative equity. She can't refinance. She can't sell without losing her life savings. She's stuck paying $3,300 a month on a 6.5% interest rate for an asset that's declining in value. Multiply Sarah by thousands across Melbourne, and you understand the scale of this crisis. This is a complete market failure. Oversupply and undersupply existing simultaneously. Too many finished apartments no one wants. Too few new apartments are being built. A government response that misses the point entirely. I'll be covering Melbourne's apartment market every week, tracking the unsold stock, analysing price movements, and exposing